Pink Panther 2006 was way ahead of its time. And this is like working at Riot Games. This is what working at Riot Games is like.
Would you like me to stay behind and help you?
That is a generous offer, Nicole. But I am quite sensitive to office gender politics. And in today's world, the slightest gesture can be misinterpreted as harassment. And it is late, and I would prefer not to put you or me into that delicate situation. Agreed?
Yes, I agree.
Well, let's seal it with a kiss, and I'll get back to work.
Riot Games, ladies and gentlemen. One of the things that I think is the biggest story of the day, hands down, is that the Riot Games walkout happened. Now, some of you probably haven't kept up to date with what this is, but just to give you the broad strokes.
Me too, lol.
Indeed. Just to give you the broad strokes of what's been going on over at Riot Games. Obviously, we are very familiar now with the original report by Kotaku about the sexist culture within Riot Games. If you've been following my work for a long period of time, this shouldn't come.
A high energy Richard tonight.
I'm full of it. I'm going to start drinking soon. So once the sprouts have digested, and then we'll have a keto-friendly beer, and hate every second I allowed myself to get overweight. Now that I have to live like a shadow of myself. But anyway, look. So let's talk about Riot Games. If you know that the report that came out on Kotaku by Cecilia D'Anastasio, I for some reason I was calling it D'Agostino. I have to apologize for that. It's like so unprofessional that I just didn't even bother to read her surname before I've been crediting her work. So apologies for that. But anyway, she did this report about inside the sexist culture at Riot Games. It's a very big report. And this was really the first domino in the chain. And I'll show you it. Now, there are some problems with this article, okay? It was penned in August 2018. And there are undoubtedly... please ignore the Gotham Bane here from the last stream. There's some problems with the article for sure. I mean, I think first and foremost, just sorry if you're epileptic, by the way. First and foremost, I think the issue is that it's too broad. For me, this article was too broad. And in the sense that it took some very real horror stories, which would shame any company, let alone one that is postured as being progressive as Riot has, which it undoubtedly has. Since Riot really hit their stride in kind of the aftermath of the StarCraft 2 bubble and their creation of LCS and the creation of their esports product, and Jeffrey Light Lynn, a habitual narcissist, liar, abuser, thoroughly awful person, and I hope he hears these comments and one day wants to pony up and take me to court for all the things I've said, so I can take all of the stuff I have on him and finally put it out in the public domain, in court documents. So please sue me if this gets to you. I would love that. I live for that moment. But he was one of the biggest pieces of shit in Riot Games, and of course was conveniently shown the door before any of this stuff started blowing up, when in reality, he was the front. When we talk about illegal businesses, let's say, how you ever played a game like Mafia or a game like, I don't know, you're some gangsters, you're some gangsters, and you have to have even the new one, Weedcraft, right? You have to have a front for the business. You have to have a front for the business, don't you? Because if you're doing something illegal in the back, people are going to question, like, why are people hanging around that building all day? Why does it have such high electricity bills? Where's all the money coming from? Why is it you're not declaring this on your taxes? So you need a front business to basically launder the money to evade detection of your illegal activities. Well, what Jeffrey Light Lynn did, and basically what his purpose was within the Riot Games business, which, lest we forget, Riot was created by a banker and a marketing expert. that is probably the two most evil professions outside of genocidist you can probably get on planet Earth. Everything they contribute to is wholly bad and detrimental, right? The banking system, as we've established, is the biggest criminal conspiracy ever perpetrated on the human race. And marketing is tricking you into spending money in areas perhaps you wouldn't ordinarily. So, no, not even lawyers, because occasionally lawyers do something good, don't they? Occasionally lawyers get someone off death row when they were innocent. Bankers don't do that. Marketers don't do that. So, no, not lawyers, never. Anyway, what Jeffrey Light Lynn did was he was the face of the business. He went out there and said, hey, look, we're making a video game that is going to revolutionize the internet. We're making a game that is going to make people better. We have a behavior system in place. We want all games to have behavior systems in place. Here's the concept of toxicity. We're going to, we're gonna change the world. The video game is just a conduit for that. Now, after having interviewed several of his exes and several of his co-workers for a story I was going to write that got killed by multiple editors and no games publication would touch, but was certainly a conduit to him leaving the company, basically it became apparent that he'd been bullied at school. You know, he was a pathetic human being who had never got past the high school phase of his life and desperately wanted to turn the tables, to have revenge, which is why, you know, there was some very weird stuff that he got into relationships with women who he'd offered jobs and positions to at Riot Games and other creepy shit and abuses of power. But no one wanted to talk about it because he was the poster boy, for the darling for the industry. Because games journalists hate gamers so much that even when they had a tyrant in their midst like him and somebody who you didn't even have to try that hard to turn over the stones, you just went, oh, first stone I came to, there was a bunch of shit about this guy. They literally allowed him to get away with all of this stuff because he was putting the onus on, hey, look, watch me come out and publicly denigrate a 12-year-old for using inappropriate language in a video game. He's posting on a forum saying his ban is unfair. I will violate his right to privacy. I will use information that probably, especially under the new the new European regulations, GDPR or whatever it is, would be an absolute egregious violation of their right to privacy and their private information. And what he would do is he would come out and he would humiliate these fucking children and he would call it a light smite. Imagine being that guy. Imagine being that guy where you violate someone's data protection to own a teenager publicly. It's mind-blowing. Anyway, he was the front for all the shady shit that was going on at Riot Games. And I'll tell you, I heard so many stories from ex-employees. I had ex-employees tell me all sorts of mad shit. You know, like real sexually inappropriate shit. I already told you about instances where a woman had potentially been the victim of revenge porn, and Riot Games conducted an investigation to obtain the pictures, and then sat there round a desk looking at the pictures, basically rating the pictures. You know, this was told to me. There was also the story I've repeated multiple times where a woman who was working an event for them was told how to dress, and when she had wore the same item of clothing twice in the history of the broadcast a week or whatever it was, they berated her for looking poor. And again, a Riot executive said to her, "Do I have to tell you how to dress now, you dumb bitch?" or words to that effect. They've been involved in smearing talent in the industry. I mean, there is nothing that there is no value that they've upheld. The only value Riot Games has ever upheld is how do we keep our foothold in the industry? How do we stay at the top? And who gives a fuck who we have to fuck over to do that? And that, unfortunately, very often has affected the frontline workers of Riot Games. The people have to come out and own these decisions and own these policies. And, you know, today, when we were looking at the Walkout story, you know, it dawned on me just how many of these people have me blocked, yet here I am in solidarity with them because I know this was going on. I mean, seriously, I heard another story about where some guy wanted to find out if another employer was gay, right? And basically started spreading it around the company that the guy had been sexually inappropriate to some dudes. And then the guy came out and said, listen, this story can't be true. I'm not gay. And then the original source of the rumors went, I was just messing around. You know, it sounds like a hellscape to work in. And when you then start looking at, you know, all of this other stuff that people have said, you know, for example, how the corporate structure works. I've talked about how I know about this firsthand. And, you know, they have a structure in place called the D20, which is basically untouchable executives that can do whatever they want within the company, can stick their nose in whatever business. It's absurd. They employ so many people who don't even know what they're doing or don't even know who they report to. And it's just a waste of money. And of course, needless to say, when you have these huge chains of command and people who can just veto that chain of command, stick their nose in and control people, yeah, abuses of power happens. People don't get called out. Like long-standing people at the company, people who were there at the company during its inception, get away with murder, which is why you can have guys at the company farting in people's faces and they don't get fired. This is why you can have allegations of rape that aren't investigated at Riot Games. It is, like I say, it's a hellscape. I pity anyone who has to work there, right? It is beyond a joke how bad this company has been internally and how long they've got away with it for. And again, if you want to look into the rape thing, I'll show you the court document where it's listed. Now, all of that being said, the problem with this article was that it was too broad in some of its complaints. For example, all the things I've listed are absolutely valid complaints. There are also instances detailed in this report where basically you know, women have been passed over for promotions they should have definitely got. And, you know, in favor of guys, or inappropriate jokes have been made in the boardroom, like referencing, again, rape jokes. You know, you can say I'm being a snowflake about that. I think if if you're in a professional environment, making a joke that, you know, alludes to rape, saying sometimes no means yes, I'm probably going to say that a professional environment isn't the place for that. You know, stand-up comedian wants to make edgy jokes about that, fine. You want to make jokes about that with your friends down the bar, fine. You want to write an article where contextually that makes sense. Professional working environment, no. Yeah. So anyway, and you can see some of the quotes here, bros before hoes and everything. But then there was some stuff that just doesn't make sense. Like a guy said, you know, called one of his teammates a bitch or something. Another complaint in this was, oh, these guys, you know, they ask questions about how good you are at games, which is essentially anti-woman, which I don't believe, and I can't subscribe to that. And there was some other stuff, I think, as well, where they complain. I don't know. There were just various little things that, like, to me, were just nowhere near as bad, and we'll talk about that when we get to the lawsuit component. Another problem with this article was the sourcing. For example, anonymous sources, right, which I have no issue with, especially when whistleblowing. But when one of those sources came out publicly and said, hey, it's me, Bex Gerber, serial liar, and someone who is seriously unwell, that doesn't bode well for the article. I mean, I would have, you know, when I was looking into the sourcing, I would have definitely took a long look at her history. This is somebody who has habitually lied, provably, deletes her lies to try and not get caught out about it. Somebody that just seems to fluctuate between, you know, oh, I'm ill, oh, I hate this industry, wow, why can't I work in this industry? Everyone's a Nazi. It's all over the place in terms of, you know, the allegations that she's made and stuff. Been abusive to trans people in the past, and herself came out as trans as a way to get around it. I mean, you know, it is not somebody I would ever. She could have the hottest story in the world, and if she was the source of it, I'd pass, because unfortunately, there's just too much damage done on a reputational basis with all the lies she's told publicly. So when she comes out and says, I'm one of the sources on this article, it can only hurt your reporting. And I feel if Cecilia had done just a little bit more digging into this, she would have discounted all of her stuff that she said. As it happened, she wasn't really the source of some of the biggest complaints. She was actually the source of a lot of the stuff that I don't think should have been in this report, because it didn't point to endemic sexism. Anyway, so let's fast forward. And I told you, if you remember watching the stream when this story broke, I said my sources at Riot have told me that they're bringing in a legal firm to basically stop these types of leaks from happening in future, and to basically find ways that they can atone, but do it all quietly, privately, without these people having, you know, any spotlight, because that's Riot in a nutshell. So let me just show you the legal team they brought in. Where was it? Hang on, sorry, there's so much on the Walkout at the moment. Is it in here? Yeah, here it is. So just to show you I'm sourcing all of this, because it's in the public domain, we can go to Rock, Paper, Shotgun. Not a website I go to very much anymore. But you can see here that it talks about the lawsuit. Two Riot Games, in the aftermath of the public revelations, two Riot Games employees decide to sue the company for sexual discrimination. And you can see the lawsuit filing was reported by Kotaku. I have an inkling Cecilia probably knew about it coming. But then look, you can see here, this is how serious they took the problem. First of all, they fired Daniel Z. Klein. A lot of people were up in arms about that, saying Daniel Z. Klein was doing the right thing by defending these people. No, Daniel Z. Klein once again had basically said that all of Riot's customers were scumbags, all gamers were scumbags, and he had no remorse, and he's been warned internally about this stuff before. That wasn't an unjust firing. He didn't adhere to their social media policy. Unfortunately, if you take on a job where you represent a company publicly, you don't just get a tweet saying all the customers are scumbags. It's very rare you'll get away with that, even if you're working for a company and you say, Donald Trump supporters are scumbags, which we all know is like just a way to signal how fucking smart you are and how much better than everyone else you are. Even then, you're likely to get fired because, as I've said, corporations don't take moral stances. Their stance is make money by any means possible. So anyway, so he got fired. So fuck that. That's nothing to do with anything. But then it said, and to help with the crisis management, they brought in a law firm renowned for union busting, Sayforth Shaw. Right, Sayforth Shaw. Now, Sayforth Shaw, let me just show you what they do. Right. This was a write-up back in 2016. Where hang on, is this the right bit? Yeah, you can read about this in this Medium post if you want to learn more about the history of the firm. This is going back to like 2016. The history of union busting goes back further, basically. But the whole purpose is that they come in, they smash apart unions, they smash apart anybody representing workers' rights on behalf of the company. That's what they do. They identify, holes where perhaps the union has what they consider too much power on behalf of the corporation, and they look to silence dissent. They look to strip away workers' rights. They look for verbiage in contracts and then hold you to it. It's what they specialize in. So when you bring in a law firm that specializes in that particular area, far be it from me to believe you when you say, oh, we're really committed to fixing this problem and we're really committed to making our environment better for workers. No, this law firm is who you hire to make your environment better for you by effectively stripping away workers' rights. That's America. Yeah, sure, of course. They do it all over the world. This particular article talks about something they did in Australia. You have to understand corporations are global. They, it's not just an American thing. So anyway, all of this led to was basically the build-up to the lawsuit. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the copy of the lawsuit, and let me just see if I can get that for you. Is it linked here? Don't want to download it. There we go. This should do it. Yes, it does. It's just it's on Scribed. Sometimes Scribed goes a bit funny with XSplit but anyway, so here we go. This is the filing. So you can see here, this is from Melanie Mccracken and Jessica Negron. Basically, there's a lot of allegations in here, and I always wanted to do a separate video just breaking down this particular lawsuit, because I think there's stuff in here, much like the original report, that just shouldn't be in a lawsuit of this nature. This is you'll see what I mean when we get to what the specific allegations are, because some are horrifying and others it's just like, really, I don't know why you're including this in a lawsuit. And it seems to me that perhaps under the advisement of their counsel, the people who filed this, they've just said, can you think of anything? There's just throw it all out there. And as a result, some of the stuff contrasts really starkly against some of the other stuff. So right, we'll skip past the intro. We'll skip past the description of the plaintiff. Let's get into the general allegations. There's a lot here, and some are laughable, so feel free to omega lull in the chat or whatever you kids do. But some are horrifying, and I hope we're all of a sensitive and intelligent enough nature to understand which is which. So, general allegations. The bro culture fostered by Riot Games. So 9. Riot Games is notorious for fostering a culture of sexism and mistreatment towards women. After having endured years of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, and without any corrective action by their employer, many of the female employees of Riot Games spoke out about these issues publicly. On August 7th, 2018, Kotaku, a video game website and blog, published an expose on the bro culture of Riot Games and the prevalent sexism and mistreatment of women. Over the course of several months, Kotaku interviewed 28 current and former Riot Games employees. In the article, a clear division between the treatment of male and female employees was illuminated. 11. Examples of the bro culture at Riot Games include, but are not limited to, some of the following. A. Defendants have required many female employees to fulfill roles above their title and pay grade, while falsely promising these women a promotion and ultimately hiring a man to fill the role after the female employee was already competently performing the position. Now, sure, this to try and play a bit of devil's advocate, this type of things happened to me before, where I've worked in an office. For example, we had I used to work in contact centers, as they're called now, call centers as most people know them, and my team leader had a mental breakdown which is often very often common. I was the most competent worker, so I was given the role and told if I do a good job, I will get the job. I did it for 6 months for no additional pay, just had the title, all the work, but none of the benefits, and I did that on the basis I was going to get the promotion. They then turned around and appointed a woman and said I didn't have the necessary skill set. So it's happened to me in the exact opposite gender roles. But that being said, if you can show a pattern of, it's always happening to women, it's always a man who gets the job, it's always a guy who's friends with the guy who are appointing the job, I think, you can very comfortably put this in a court document and let the evidence speak for itself. Female employees are regularly belittled by supervisors at staff meetings by comments such as her kids and husband must really miss her while she was at work, she talks louder than she should, she's shrill, or she should speak less. Now, this is all, inappropriate office talk, inappropriate working environment talk, and if it's coming from management, this isn't appropriate at all. And while I have no doubt they make similar disparaging comments about some men, this is very pointed and sexist language. So again, if this is all provable, then obviously this is ridiculous. This is not anything any worker, speaking as a former union shop steward, this is not, no worker should have to work in that environment. No worker should have to be belittled in that way. C. Male employees are celebrated for their ideas, while simultaneously women are either not asked for ideas, or if they are asked, the ideas are dismissed immediately without conversation and with repugnance. Now, again, this is very speculative. There's no concrete examples. I'd be inclined to probably not include that unless you have something solid, preferably from one or two of the plaintiffs. D. Women are made fun of and sexually objectified. There is even an ongoing email chain of Riot Games' hottest women employees, which rates the hotness of each female on the list. This is disgraceful. This is beyond inappropriate for a workplace. The existence of that email is horrendously damning. And again, there is no working environment. This, to put it in context, this would be inappropriate if Playboy was doing this. It's ridiculous to even think that this is the type of thing you do in high school, where again, for children and horny teenagers, I'd be willing to give it a pass. That is just, the first manager that comes into that thread and doesn't say if they join in, if they give their opinion, they ultimately should be fired because they're incapable of enforcing working standards and practice. Because somewhere there will be a document where this is deemed to be inappropriate. It'll be in everyone's contracts when they sign up. This will be against a code of conduct somewhere. But the managers haven't shut this down. Instead, what's likely, they've come in and they've joined in. The only appropriate response, if you get CC'd in a work email like this, is to immediately tell everybody they're reported. There's going to be a disciplinary meeting and to shut this shit down immediately. That's the only appropriate response to it if you're in a managerial position. So I think that's horrendous. C. Women are required to participate and tolerate crude male humor, which includes jokes about sex, defecation, masturbation, rape, and torture. Women who do not join in these adolescent humor jokes are classified as snobby and unwilling to fit in with the company. During a single month, Ms. Negron counted that the word dick was used in excess of 500 times by male employees of Riot Games. So this is a really, this is a divisive one because, right, again, keep in mind, appropriate work conduct, appropriate work conversation, right? A joke about rape, a joke about masturbation, a joke about sex, a joke about torture, none of these things are appropriate for the workplace, are they? you know, maybe the torture thing, you know, again, I'm pretty sure if somebody said, man, I'd like to torture Donald Trump, no one would have an issue with it, and it wouldn't be classified as a bad taste joke. It would be classified probably as a wish for a lot of liberal Americans who don't see the monster in the mirror these days. But, you know, torture is subjective. If we're specifically talking about the sexual torture of women, I mean, it's, you know, beyond a fucking joke, isn't it? But the defecation one, this is what I mean. You know, what are we saying? Like, what's the defecation? Oh, I had diarrhea. If you got diarrhea off that fucking Taco Bell, you know, that's defecation humor. That, to me, is probably on the threshold of things you can talk about at work with people at work, you know. The rest of it, not so much. When and then the final sentence, Miss Negron counted that the word dick was used in excess 5 times. The idea that you're going around tallying the time everyone says dick is honestly a waste of your time. It's not a big deal. This type of thing, again, for me, detracts from the rest of the case because, you know, it could, like, again, there's a world of difference between, wow, look at that guy behaving like a dick, or would you like to see my dick, or, you know, holy shit, my dick's amazing. You know, there's a big sliding scale. Context matters. Counting the number 500 is largely irrelevant. And of course, I've just realized now that I've said that that's getting clipped. But you know what I mean. The language is completely different.
Riot
You know,
Games,
different.
The industry standard for ball tapping. Thanks for the content, Richard.
So then, women are required to participate in online gaming where they are routinely harassed and demeaned by other players. Female employees must therefore be subject to internal and external harassment as part of their working conditions. This is garbage. This is absolutely nonsensical. It makes so many false assertions, or rather, so many assertions that cannot be proven as true and aren't proven as true within this legal document. That is nonsensical to me to include it. Riot Games are a fucked up cult, so yes, you all have to play video games, and very often you have to play video games at work, and I've heard that sometimes this isn't optional, this is a mandatory thing you have to do. They'll call you in for a team building exercise and you all have to sit around and play a new video game that's come out. Some people might not like that, some people might want to just get on with work, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And trying to imply that women have it worse because of the actions of people external to Riot Games doesn't help your case, has nothing to do with Riot Games, and isn't even provably true. So, anyway, let me just hydrate here. During the hiring process, Riot Games looks for core gamers. Yep, they've pretty much said this everywhere. That's what they want. Which are predominantly male individuals who are best described as video game fans, and specifically hardcore video game fans. However, men are assumed to be core gamers, whereas women are assumed to not be core gamers or even gamers at all. Because this hiring practice disproportionately favors men, many qualified women have been denied employment because they were not considered core gamers. You know, this is kind of all over the place, because on the one hand, you're arguing that women are harassed in the gaming space and shouldn't be made to game, and that Riot look for core gamers, and this favors men. Like, so you're saying here that women get overlooked because we don't game enough, but we shouldn't have to game enough to like, you know what I mean? It's a bit of a weird one, putting these two together. There's a bit of a juxtaposition. Because the hiring practice disproportionately favors men, many qualified women have been denied employment because they're not considered core gamers. Female applicants and employees who are outspoken are considered aggressive, too ambitious, and annoying. Indeed, plaintiff Negron's former supervisor, Jeff Chandler, once told her that diversity should not be a focal point of the design of Riot Games products because gaming culture is the last remaining safe haven for white teen boys. Now,
You're not even a real journalist.
don't agree with that statement, if true.
Any updates on
Don't
the
see
Reddit lawsuit that you could share?
Don't see how this all links together. This is just a bit meandering, a bit strange. It goes on. Similarly, in 2015, at a global Riot conference, a senior producer named Steve Snow spoke to an audience which included plaintiff Mccracken and other female attendees and emphasized the importance of hiring only core gamers, a group that is comprised almost exclusively of men. And it's, you know, if you don't specifically say, we want to hire core game. Like, if you say we want to hire core gamers of all backgrounds, you've got a real tough time making the argument that what they're really doing is excluding women, especially given that everybody talks now about the data point that 50% of gamers are women. So this entire, again, there's a lot of typos as well in the law firm, and you know, in this legal document rather, and it says to me that the law firm rushed this and didn't really think about a lot of this, and there's a lot of garbage in here. I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but I read lawsuits pretty much, you know, on a weekly to monthly basis. I take a lot of consultation with lawyers on the basis of those lawsuits, and done a lot of journalistic coverage around lawsuits. I'm telling you, this isn't a particularly well put together one based on what I've seen in terms of the standard of English, the levels of allegations, and you know how it backs up those allegations with data points. 13. If a female gets a job with Riot Games, the discrimination continues through the female employee's tenure at Riot Games. During meetings and feedback sessions, female employees are constantly talked over by men in meetings, because it's what you call mansplaining and not just general rudeness. These meetings typically comprise up to half of a typical workday at Riot Games. Ultimately, the discrimination creates a ceiling for its female employees as they are denied higher pay, promotions, and leadership opportunities. Again, very tough to prove. No specific examples. Inclined to discount it on that basis. 14. The ability to gain promotions, better job titles, and equal pay is not the only issue plaguing the women of Riot Games. Female employees are exposed to ongoing sexual harassment and misconduct, and are subject to retaliation for speaking out against such misconduct. As examples of the hostile work environment, female employees have endured the following. And again, I want you to discern which ones are grotesque and which ones shouldn't be in a lawsuit. A. There are unsolicited and unwelcome pictures of male genitalia shown to employees from their bosses or colleagues. This I can verify. Let me tell you, and I even think there was a Tencent employee that got outed publicly, not directly tied to Riot Games. But I have had multiple female Riot employees and people who have worked in the League of Legends space just tell me about unsolicited dick pics. And I've always believed, I'm probably a bit naive and showing my age a little bit, you know, my boomerdom or whatever you want to call it, my boomer state of mind. Because to me, I couldn't conceive of just sending an unsolicited dick pic to anyone. Given that I'm a public figure, I'd never send a dick pic anyway, because you become a target for being hacked. And not that I've got anything to be ashamed of, but I'd rather, working in the space I work in, that people haven't seen pictures of my penis. Yeah, just saying.
How many of these people were RLOL mods screwing over users to Riot employees screwing over their co-workers?
Well, keep in mind, the Reddit League of Legends moderators deleted the article originally, and I can't even remember what basis it was on. They, I think, first said these are unproven allegations, the classic they like to go to. Then the second reason, I think, was that Cecilia had tweeted out the Reddit thread, and therefore it was vote brigading and manipulation. Now, understand, that is no longer a violation of Reddit rules. It wasn't at the time. People have been told, as long as you stick to your 9:1 ratio, you can tweet stuff out. So they then allowed another one to be posted. If you use Reddit check on Google Chrome, though, you can go to the original. This had like 3,000 comments in it, the original article. So the League of Legends moderators basically shielded Riot Games from attention and criticism about sexually abusing people and other forms of harassment, because, you know, why not? Because they're moderators, right? And that's just what you have to do. So anyway, I can confirm, yes, that women, this is just an esports thing in general, unfortunately. The amount of women that I work with, the amount of women I talk to who work in this space, dick pics are insane. Like, the volume they have to wade through, it's insane. If their Twitter DMs are open, people just send them dick. If their co-workers send them dick. I've seen women I've worked with in esports. Oh, have I frozen? Hello?
You're not even a real journalism. That's right.
Classic. It did this last time, and I think it was an overheating thing. I don't want to have to go back to my... Nope, still there. I think it's my capture card is overheating. Let me, Yeah, I'll continue in a second. I'm just going to quickly reboot the well, not reboot, but unplug the capture card. And if that doesn't work, I'll switch back to the good old
You're not even a real journalist.
920, which never overheats.
That's right.
So am I OG yet?
Okay. So that's everything cycled out. And let's try add in... Yeah, there we go. I'm back in the game. So down here. Right. Sorry about that. Griff cut that out of the VOD. This is how I check if he's actually doing his job and looking at this stuff. What's wrong? What do you mean is? Right, anyway. So,
You're not even a real journalism.
a female employee. Yeah. Anyway, so I've just to finish the anecdote. I worked with one girl on one event, and literally she just showed me a text message she got where she was having a completely innocuous exchange, and then she said, "But look at this." And
Griff, mate, just checking on you.
yeah, you check on Griff, man. She said, "Just look at this," and it was just an innocuous conversation. And he just said, "Oh, can I ask you just to quickly size me up?" And she didn't know what he meant, and then she didn't reply because she was trying to figure out what it meant. And the dude just sent his erect penis, foreskin fully retracted. Like, it's like, who does that shit? Like, how deranged do you have to be to do that to somebody? Like, in my day, that was a sex crime. Like, you couldn't do it on phones, obviously. Although you did have sex pests who would call you up and the heavy breathers. But like people who used to go down to the fucking street corner and show off their penises, we called them flashers, and they went to prison. So I don't understand people sending unsolicited dick pics at all. I think it should. There was legislation passed in New York, I believe it is, where they literally have said that they're going to make it a crime. Good, because if I had a daughter, I wouldn't want her wading through that shit. So there you have it. Anyway, a female employee discovered an email chain discussing what it would be like to penetrate her, in which a colleague added that she would be a good target to sleep with and not call again. So again, I'm assuming that these plaintiffs have these emails. So I will assume that is genuine. And again, that is disgraceful. It's indefensible. It's indefensible. Nobody has shut that down and done anything about it. It is no worker, male or female, should be humiliated like that. Should be, discussed about in that way in a professional environment. C. Another female employee recalled a colleague once informing her that she was on a list getting passed around by senior leaders detailing who they would sleep with. And this, again, is certainly believable, isn't it? Because we've referred now to 2 specific emails internally, email chains, where male employees, including management, are saying, yeah, I'd like to fuck her. You know, you shouldn't call her back. I bet fucking her would be great. I mean, it's ridiculous. It truly is insane. And if it's senior leaders doing this, it just shows how rotten the company is at its core. 2 former employees said they felt pressured to leave Riot Games after making their concerns about gender discrimination known. One former male employee said that Riot Games bro culture is more pronounced behind closed doors. Got no reason to disbelieve this based on my own personal experiences, my own conversations with Riot Games employees. E. A former employee was asked, how big is your e-peen during an interview, referring to measuring her video game acumen in terms of penis size. This isn't serious. This is silly. This is probably someone trying to make a joke and using unprofessional language to make a joke. It doesn't belong in the same list as the other examples. And this is, again, these including things like this. It's already shocking. It's already unforgivable. Including things like this just detract from your case. A female employee who complained about the frequent usage of the words bitch and pussy in the work environment saw the conversation pivot towards her interpretations of the words rather than their usage. I don't necessarily think bitch is gendered language anymore like it used to be. In the 80s, when I grew up, it certainly was aimed almost exclusively at women, with the sort of more common acceptance of gay culture. You know, the word bitch became increasingly used towards men, and now it, as a lot of gay culture does, it crosses over into mainstream heteronormative culture, and we adopt all the cool stuff that gay people do, and bitch became sort of an everyday word. So I don't see it as a gendered insult. I do probably see it as inappropriate language for the workplace. I don't understand why you would be using the word pussy in the workplace. Again, just doesn't have any place there, does it? Men telling jokes or circulating emails with jokes or pictures that are intended to demean women's intellect or are sexually explicit, again, has no place in the workplace. As soon as anybody sees an email like this, it should be reported. The person who sent it, created it, and everyone who contributed to it should be disciplined. And any managers that were in on it should be fired or demoted because they're not fit to do their job. Intentionally explaining information or ideas to women in a condescending or patronizing way, also referred to as mansplaining, that's just nonsense because you don't even specifically refer to any examples. So what you're effectively saying by including that is all male employees do this to all women, all of the time. And yes, the irony of me mansplaining that while I'm breaking this down isn't lost on me because I'm not stupid, but I'm certainly not as stupid as that there. That has no place in this legal document. Punching, grabbing, and touching each other's genitals as a form of a gag. This, of course, refers to a senior executive at Riot Games who was ball-tapping male employees. I mean, guys, like, I don't know what to tell you. It's sexual assault. You shouldn't be flicking each other's genitals at work. You want to do it outside. I've been in a rugby club. I've seen some shit. I've participated in some shit that, again, I can't talk about because it's just that sort of environment. Again, very borderline, homo-curious, weird banter. That is the hallmark of the average rugby team. But you shouldn't be... If your boss comes over to you and flicks your testicles while you're at work for a joke, you should immediately step up from your desk, go and report them to HR, and refuse to go to work because until it is resolved, because you've been the victim of a sexual assault. That is what grabbing someone's genitals is. It's never a joke. If you're not consenting to that at all, and there's even an argument to say in a workplace, even if you're all consenting, it's obviously an issue for all the co-workers that have to watch it and witness it. Shouldn't be happening in a working environment. Using their hands to signal gestures of male masturbation or female cunnilingus. I imagine this is doing this to say somebody's a wanker, or doing the old fork tongue V. Again, no place in the workplace. Mimicking women blatantly in front of them. Bit petty by comparison. Telling stories on a daily basis about alcohol consumption and sexual conquests. This is something that happens in all line of work. I've dealt with this. I've actually presided over a disciplinary hearing where I represented a guy who basically he was coming into work in a call center which has an open floor plan, and between calls he was talking across to another one of his workers and his stories. He was a Geordie lad. His stories all involved, well, I got fucking mortal drunk on the weekend, like, and then I fucking took this bird home and I fucking banged her, like. And it was like that, you know, and he was talking a lot about that. But what I was able to argue was that when we got the complaint, several complaints had been made to the manager by other members of staff, and the manager then wanted to basically, I think, fire him. I think it was a firing. And the bottom line is the company couldn't fire him. And I was saying, look, He comes to work. There's been several complaints made to you, the manager. You didn't make him aware of the complaints from his co-workers. My client would be absolutely mortified to think that he'd offended anyone. He wasn't aware people could hear. He's not a bad guy. He doesn't want to upset anybody while he's here at work. You haven't warned him in any formal capacity. This type of behavior, it would be completely inappropriate of you to proceed direct to dismissal without disciplinary action. And in the end, we got him from being fired down to being having a note in his file being told he'd been warned about it before. So that was a win-win. Another reason why get yourself in a union.
With you at the call center.
Yeah, well, Vince gets around, doesn't he? Like, I fucking mighty hungry, like. I fucking hate that Game of Thrones, man. It's fucking shite. So anyway, that to me, if you're like mimicking women and talking about like how much beer you had the night before, it's a very common thing where you come into work, you're all jacked up from the weekend, you see your friends at work, you start talking about things that really should probably be checked at the door when you come into work. It's not a big serious thing. It happens all the time. Managers just need to basically, whenever they hear it, say, guys, please don't talk about that. We're here to work. We're here to do a job. Save it for your lunch breaks. Save it for off-site. You know, it's not appropriate here. And that's pretty much the extent. So why you would include it in a lawsuit of this gravity, I don't know. Using their bodies to simulate humping another person, that's up there with the ball tapping. You know, it's not a great leap to say if someone comes up behind you, pretends to fuck your head while you're at work. You know, there's a lot of people that would say that is sexual assault. So shouldn't be happening. Expressing flatulence as a form of a joke and then laughing about it with other male colleagues. This, of course, is again the same ball-tapping executive that was like literally walking up to people and farting in their face, like as a surprise. Like, I'm fart man, and he would jump out a fucking, you know, jump round a corner, like it's someone who was sat down. I'm aghast, you know, because this would be pathetic if this was a 16-year-old employee, honestly, right? But the fact that this is coming from a grown man in like late 30s, early 40s, and somebody who's in charge of other people, it's just ridiculous. And that person, if I remember correctly, we'll look at it after we've gone through the rest of this document. That person's still at Riot Games, I think. He didn't get fired, despite the ball tapping and the farting being the same dude. The co-founder of the company, Brandon Beck, used the phrase, "No doesn't necessarily mean no," as a slogan for the company, as I was talking about earlier, during a company meeting. His comment was met with laughter by many of the attendees. A male employee spoke out and said it was a rape joke, but was informed by the company's co-founder that his time at the company was limited, and he was eventually forced to separate from the company. Now, again, if this is provable, this is outrageous. If one of the co-founders of the company comes into a meeting, makes a rape joke, somebody says, "Sir, all due respect, you probably shouldn't be making a rape joke. And they turn around in that meeting and say, your days are numbered at this company, and that person is eventually managed out or forced to leave. I mean, this violates so much employment law, it's beyond a joke. Now, I can't speak for America, but I do understand that California is certainly more in line with Europe and has a lot of very liberal-leaning policies and is better for workers' rights than some other states. But again, speaking as somebody that's worked as a union representative for people, it would be ridiculous that for a senior manager to say to somebody else, your time at this company is limited. You just can't do that. I mean, even saying that in jest could put that person under great psychological pressure. And look, one of the things that we all come to realize is our jobs, because it's tied directly to our livelihoods, our ability to feed our families, our ability to feed ourselves, our ability to have a home, our employment is so important. There is nothing more stressful. It's one of the most stressful things. It's a trigger for suicide, losing your job, right? Losing your job and being unemployed, depression, mental health. So putting somebody through that, even in jest, is beyond inappropriate. That person should absolutely make a lawsuit of their own if that's true, if that's at face value. P. A former male employee was allowed to remain in a position of leadership despite regularly making sexual comments in the workplace and drugging and raping another Riot Games employee. Now, I've been told privately who this is about. I'm certainly not touching that with a 10-foot pole. But you can immediately see here, I don't even know why this is in a lawsuit and why this isn't instead being pursued by the police. Why, if you know something about this, why this hasn't been reported, why, I'm assuming it hasn't. And it's so shocking to just see this put in there. I mean, I don't even know where to begin dissecting that, because obviously, as I said, it's a police matter. And I believe in cases like this, you absolutely must have evidence, and allegations like this can destroy lives. That and while I understand when victims are victims of things like this, it destroys their life too. We have to try and be as detached as we can and stay true to the principles of a fair and just society, which is innocent until proven guilty. Now, all of that being said, it wouldn't be inappropriate if there were rumors circulating around a workplace of this nature that you would immediately go to the accused and you would say, this is for your benefit, but I'm putting you on gardening leave, or whatever you want to call it. You're on paid leave while we investigate this and get to the bottom of this, because we need to quash these rumors, and we can't do an investigation while you're in the working environment, because you might prejudice it. Plus, as well, it might put untold stress on you. So go home. I know it's a stressful time. We're going to conduct our own investigation as employees. Now, certainly it sounds like, by the fact that it's been included in this lawsuit, nothing like that has happened. What do you, where do you begin with something as horrifying as that? So that just sits on an island all by itself. Q. A former vice president routinely bragged about visiting strip clubs on work trips during his 7-year tenure at Riot Games. Certainly believe this. There's a lot of losers in esports, and I've said this, I will never suggest a strip club to anybody. I find them tiresome. When I was a much younger man, I used to think they were great. Wow, look at this. I can afford it. Overpriced drinks, and there is a scantily clad woman sat down being paid to pretend to like me. Isn't this great? And then you hit a point where you realize how pathetic it is, just how sad it is. It's just like... And I hit that point in my early to mid 20s, and you just don't do it. But unfortunately, in Riot, in esports, and I'm sure at Riot Games, the result of it, there's lots of people who think it's the most bling, high level executive, high rolling shit you can do. So the amount of times they say, at E-League every week, let's go to Cheaters, and it's like, guys, can we just sit in the corner and have a drink? All right, okay, cool. And it's like, I don't mind if you want to go for the novelty of going like once, but when it becomes like a regular fucking habitual thing that you go into strip clubs all the time, it's not for me. It's not for me. I mean, each to their own, but I think it's pretty much a kind of loser thing to do. So that's just me talking. If you can get actual women to talk to you, I don't understand why you would want to do that. So. And again, I'm not anti-strippers. They can perfectly, I absolutely support their, right to earn a living doing that. And it shouldn't be illegal or, regulated. Well, it should be regulated, but it shouldn't be regulated to the point where people can't do it.
Good evening, Rich.
Thank you very much for the sub, buddy. Thanks for the 2 years. Detlef Insomniac, been a while. Great to see you again. But anyway, it's just not for me. I just think they're pathetic. I think generally the type of guys that frequent these things, regularly are pathetic people. 16. On August 16th, a Riot Unplugged meeting occurred to discuss the issues espoused in the Kotaku article. Riot Unplugged is a question and answer session between the COO, CEO, and president of Riot Games and the employees. After the meeting, a female employee sent a company-wide email to Riot Games with a terse, confident subject line reading, "That was not enough for me." This email was met with a flood of concerned responses from other female employees. Well, what a surprise, right? You get the high-level executives of Riot Games to come in and say, hey, we're here to listen to your concerns. But before we listen to your concerns, let's just say a few things. And basically what this is it's the illusion of concern. It's the illusion of consideration. They spit their corporate mantra, and they're looking to see who's going to step out of line. How much do you love the company, right, compared to your own rights, compared to your own co-workers who've been treated horrendously? Basically, I've seen this type of thing happen again in when there's been big investigations within companies as well. So on August 29th, 22 days after Kotaku published the article detailing the culture of sexism at Riot Games, defendants posted an apology blog stating the company hasn't always been or wasn't the place we promised you, and led all employees, especially women, to believe the company was going to make big, impactful cultural changes that have yet to be seen and do not make up for the hundreds, if not thousands, of women affected, punished, terminated, or rejected by Riot Games' illegal employment practices. Be very careful saying plain language like that in your, lawsuit, because that's immediately going to get that challenged. At a forum with Mark Merrill, a co-founder of Riot Games, he admitted fault and began crying in front of an audience of his employees. Mark Merrill. When will it ever end with this guy? I mean, the idea that this guy gives a shit about anything, that this guy has sort of any, cares about anything beyond his own self-image and the company he created, is hilarious. And it just shows what a fucking narcissistic, sociopathic thing is. Like, you go to the company president, the leader of the company, with these complaints in an open forum, and the guy that you're looking to for guidance and promises about how he's going to make it better starts crying. It's a joke, frankly. And again, you want to feel sorry for yourself, you want to feel sorry for the employees. Well, show us that you do care by meaningful action, not by, again, some crocodile motherfucking tears from a guy who every time he's caught out doing shit basically plays victim. So, I mean, fuck Mark Merrill. 18. On September 7th, 2018, nearly a month after the Kotaku article was published, Daniel Klein and Matthias Lehmann, that's the thing about PAX West and them getting fired. We're ignoring all of that stuff because I told you I don't give a fuck about those guys getting fired. They were idiots. Right. On September 13th, 2018, Kotaku published another article shockingly reporting that the men in senior leadership roles that essentially created and cultivated Riot Games' pro culture are still employed by the company. Many former and current Rioters were outraged that Mr. Klein and Mr. Lehman were separated from the company for speaking out against the perpetrators, yet there was no punishment or repercussions on the senior leadership. The LA Times published an article detailing its own investigation into Riot Games corporate culture by interviewing 10 current and former employees who said that they experienced double standards, glass ceilings, and or sexual harassment at the company. So now, at this point, right, if you didn't trust Kotaku, and I understand why you don't, by the way, but listen, me and Cecilia are probably on about as good speaking terms as I can be with a Kotaku journalist. I have a lot of admiration for the work she's done. I'll call her out when she does bad work, like I did where she just falsely labeled XQC as having said something he didn't, and it's incredibly dangerous. And then she was pissy when she had to apologize. I can't tolerate that. I think if you're a journalist, if you ever put anything inaccurate into the public domain that you are labeling as journalism, and you fuck it up, you must be humble, you must be contrite, and if you're not, it shows a monstrous form of arrogance. But I could also understand why, having that combative spirit that you need, it's misplaced. Like I've always said, if anything I ever reported had ever been inaccurate, I would be mortified. You wouldn't need to pile on. I would apologize because I wouldn't have let me down. I'd let the readers down. That's who you do it for if you have the right journalistic mindset. But this is a secondary publication now. This is a secondary publication that investigated, interviewed 10 other employees, and guess what they found? This is what I'm talking about. When it's like, by the time you get up to 38 people, let's take out Bex Gerber and say 37. By the time you get to 37 people all saying the same thing, maybe it's true, like maybe there is a little bit of smoke that denotes that there might be a fire somewhere, like obviously you've got to be careful with that. For example, I made my views on the whole Kavanaugh situation very clear. That was a complete farce. But we were talking, one person and even our own witnesses were like saying it didn't happen and they couldn't remember it and stuff like this. This is 37 people. This is like Weinstein levels. So when you get to that, I'm also inclined, despite my innocent until proven guilty mindset, I'm pretty sure Weinstein did some shit. And I'm pretty sure Riot Games has done some shit. Anyway, the employees that spoke out described a workplace where women regularly talked over or ignored. When some women argued their points of view in meetings, they were labeled hysterical or simply excluded from future meetings and opportunities, while men were promoted for the same behavior. 2 women said they experienced professional retaliation for asking pointed questions to managers. 3 of the employees confirmed Kotaku's report of sophomoric and sexualized behavior in the workplace, including a running gag that involved male co-workers smacking one another's genitals. There are some further allegations here. The hits keep on coming from Jessica Negron herself. This is where it gets interesting. Basically, to summarize this section, she was qualified to do a job, did a job, was paid a lot less than doing a job, and somebody was put into that job at over double the salary. Then it became apparent that based on statements made to her by the manager she reported to when she requested feedback on why she didn't get the job, that actually she was never going to be employed, and this basically led her to leave the company. Now, if all of that is true, that's constructive dismissal. That's a slam dunk. Now, if it's constructive dismissal on the basis of gender and you successfully argue that, then that is a lot of money, and rightly so. And then this is Melanie Mccracken's allegations, very similar. Talking about how she also had worked jobs and then wasn't promoted into them. Lots of weird workplace gossip and bullying being aimed at her. And this is where it starts to get particularly bad. Miss Mccracken was warned by her supervisor to move to another team because she had a target on her back for complaining about her previous manager's misconduct. This just shows that even when the women tried to do this internally, the company basically prioritized supporting existing managerial staff over women that were trying to raise complaints against that managerial staff. So this is all pretty lengthy, and then it goes into what the allegations are within the terms of the class action. So that's the lawsuit. Go seek it out if you want. It's up on Scribed. It was also published on Kotaku, but you get the message. So, as I said, off the back of this lawsuit, they then bring in a union-busting law firm, right? And what are they, right? And after promising meaningful changes, guess what they then decide to do, right? They decide to bring in a new rule where you have to forego any form of suing Riot Games and have what is called forced arbitration. Right, and I'll explain what that is. I'll just show you the report first so you get an idea of what's going on. Not the walkout, please. Here it is. So the lawsuit was underway, and they had that union-busting law firm. They had the law firm that doesn't give a fuck about workers' rights, except how they demean their clients, their big business clients, basically file a motion to block current employees from taking any legal action based on gender discrimination within the company. So what is forced arbitration? To put it into very simple terms, forced arbitration, and a lot of tech companies do this, a lot of startups do this, a lot of companies that, you know, feel they might be financially vulnerable. It happens in politics. Wherever there's a reputational component to the allegations, when you sign a contract, you may very often find that there is a forced arbitration. In fact, the Overwatch League has a forced arbitration policy, if I remember rightly, in their player contracts, in their player agreements, that you forego your right to sue them, even if they mistreat you, even if they're guilty of malpractice. You can't take it externally to a private law firm. Now, there are some states that argue this isn't legally binding, and a lot of forced arbitration has been exposed. There's huge pushback against forced arbitration because the government has used it. They've literally taken taxpayers' money to buy women's silence about being sexually assaulted by powerful men. It's absurd to think that this is a thing. But basically, yeah, you forego your right to sue the company. So forced arbitration means that you have to go through an arbitrary body that look at the complaints you lay out, look at the defense from the company, and then they award you money based on the veracity and severity of those complaints, and it is done quietly, which is why Riot Games want it, with no court record, right? So, and anybody, and again, there's one in the UK I've worked with, there's a trade union guy called ACAS, which is, I know, the Arbitrary Conciliatory Accounting Service or something. It's ACAS anyway, look it up. And what they do is they typically pressure people into taking low amounts because they don't want to have to spend the money on a long drawn out arbitrary process, right? So they basically immediately come in with a final offer and will pressure workers in, like, by saying this is the offer and this is in line with what people get whether they go to this or not. But it's not true, because if you go to court and you win, payouts are always higher. You may not make as much depending on the deal you have with the lawyer, but generally you'll be financially better off. This is another reason why arbitration works against the workers. No worries.
I've been slogging through the No Majors Club VODs you've uploaded. Thanks for making long hours and long drives a little more bearable.
No worries, brother. Happy to do it. Always there with content. Talking into a microphone, it's what I do. So yes, so they're now bringing in forced arbitration. This, to a lot of people, even though I told you this was coming, was a shock. It was a shock because Riot Games had made so many apologies, paid so many platitudes, were trying to get a media that had basically promoted them to the point where they believed their own bullshit, believed they were untouchable, back on side. But of course, the leaks are happening now, guys. People aren't afraid to talk about your shit anymore. People are coming out and talking about what you've been getting away with for years. And this really is serious. This has the potential to be the demise of Riot Games as an entity, because this is so grotesque. This is so awful to do this to your employees, because what you are saying is we will pay to have you silenced. We will pay to have this hermetically sealed. We will pay to make sure nothing gets out. But that means what you're essentially paying for is to make sure nothing changes and you don't get any negative publicity and it doesn't hurt your business. And what does that say about your regard for the women that have been affected, for the other employees that have been affected? What does that say about how much you value your own employees? It says pretty much like every other big corporation, for all your cultist bullshit where you have a hardcore group who will riot till they die, as you've expanded to 4,000 employees worldwide and had to bring in people that don't want to go through an interview process where you ask them dumb questions like, do you like Monte Cristo? Because if you do, you can't work here. And you've had to employ real competent people. As you've gone through that process, what you have shown yourself to be the same as every other big corporation, and that is that you don't give a fuck about your workers, even ones who are victims of sexual abuse in the workplace. For fucking shame. For shame. I mean, in my wildest dreams, knowing everything that I know about Riot, knowing that shit like this was going on, I never thought you could stoop so low as to, instead of putting your hands up, try and once again control your employees, treat them like subjects in your serfdom, and fucking force them into a bad financial deal, and more importantly, forever being able the catharsis of sharing their story publicly or creating meaningful change by taking you to court. It is appalling. And that, my friends, is what triggered today's walkouts, and that is why I was in full support of the walkouts, right? Because it is absolutely imperative that a spotlight is shone on this. You know what they say, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I applaud all of the Riot Games workers that had the courage to go out. Looked like there was actually quite a few of them, more than I expected. For sure, because as walkouts go, this could have been 12 people. Just to give you an idea, by the way, of how endemic this stuff might be. Understand that if this had happened to one or two people, it would still be disgusting, but it wouldn't have the far-reaching implications that would make employees jeopardize their employment by taking a stand. That's the reality. If somebody in another department that you don't know says this thing happened to them, and you're all right, and you've not seen anything like that, it's human nature to think, you know what, like I'm gonna keep quiet. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to get on the wrong side of everybody. I'm gonna keep my head down. And that surely is cowardly and surely is unprincipled, but it is also surely the way 95% of people probably would behave. Imagine how widespread it has to be to get 200 people, by the most recent count on social media, out protesting this in the LA offices, which I don't even know how many people are over there. Some people say that's like half the office. Some people have said it's like, not half. I don't know. I don't know how many people they employ in the LA office, but it's a significant number. 200 people from one office. So here's the write-up. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Vice doesn't appear properly, does it? I always forget about that. Wait, can I do... Let's do the workaround. Here we go. So this is the Vice right upon it. Over 100 Riot Games employees walked out and forced arbitration. And you can see here, right? It goes over the lawsuit, and then Jocelyn Monahan, a social listening strategist at Riot Games and one of the organizers of the walkout, told Vice, "We're asking forced arbitration to be ended for all past, current, and future Riot employees, including contractors, and also in current litigation. I am terrified to stand in front of you and demand change, but I will not apologize for the trembling of my hands or the wavering of my voice, because I will not stand complicit in the face of injustice," said Ronnie Blackburn, an insights researcher at Riot. "Whether you are here to show your support, express your dissent, or simply discuss so that you can better understand the situation, this is a hard and scary thing to be part of. So thank you. Thank you for all your courage here today." Now, listen, this isn't an exaggeration when you're talking about a company, Riot Games, that is as vindictive as Riot Games. They have a track record of being vindictive. And I'm not just saying that off the back of the Thorin video that Thorin made, where they literally fucked him out of a hosting gig, nor am I talking about my own experience where, for those who are new and don't know about this, Riot Games basically went to ESL, who had hired me to work a StarCraft event in San Jose, which had come off the back of me and Riot Games and D-Man having some mad three-way fucking falling out because they fucked me over on releasing a story. Basically, to give you the summary, I went to D-Man and Joe and heard they were leaving LCS as commentators. They told me, yes, their story was correct, and that I should go to Riot Games and they will give them a statement because they've been told to be media silent. So out of respect to Joe and D-Man, two friends of mine that I've known a long time, or well, I'm still cool with Joe. Two people in the industry I had a lot of respect for, even though by this point D-Man was a massive fucking diva and asshole, right? Just notorious behind the scenes for his bullshit, and was basically trying to take a job at ESL to make a power play to insert himself into any game he wanted rather than League of Legends, which after he'd leveraged the community to get his job at League of Legends by putting a Reddit post up saying, "I'm going to have to quit, guys," while putting a tweet out, and the Reddit post followed. But anyway, so I then went to Riot Games and basically said, "Can I get a statement, please? I'm going to publish this story." And they said, "Yeah, we'll get right back to you." And then they published it themselves and basically said, "Fuck off." And what they did was they had a conversation where they basically said, "Richard Lewis cannot be the one to break our news, so we're going to fuck him over." And they worked with ESL, Anna Radovovitz, or whatever her name is, to do this, because ESL were involved in the announcement, because that's where D-Man was heading. He was obviously going to an executive position over there. And then it later transpired that D-Man also happened to be the guy who was completely fine with that. They asked him, they tipped him off, he didn't tell me about it. And then when I wanted to show what Riot Games had done, I just bought an iPad, so I published an email. I published the email, and it showed that the email had come from D-Man, because I forgot to cut the part out because I didn't know how to do it on an iPad. And that D-Man was super pissed off at me about it. I was super pissed off at him. So we had a big argument. Obviously, I'd accidentally outed that he'd shared information. Not proud of that, not my proudest moment. It was a mistake, but it wasn't malicious, it wasn't vindictive, and ultimately it didn't matter because he'd left Riot Games. So, and equally, what he'd done to me by basically working with those guys to get a rapid, quick-fire response out with his statement and everything else was, to me, an abuse of our friendship and the position that we held, because he was the one that was like, Joe was just like, "Can't say anything, mate," and that was the end. D-Man was the one that, like, you know, was like, "Go to Riot Games." Then before I even got there, tipped them off, so they were able to get all their ducks in a row. That's just the guy. But whatever, anyway. You know, they, off the result of that, off the back of that, it was an Intel Extreme Masters, and they had a League of Legends event there, and they went to Carmack and ESL and James Knigget and those guys, and basically said, Richard Lewis can't be anywhere near our product. We don't want him in the same building as League of Legends staff, as League of Legends people. And we take this so seriously, we're willing to pull League of Legends from IEM if you hire him. So I got a phone call from fucking Knigget, I think it was, from James, and he basically said, like, brother, I'm real sorry about this. I know it's short notice. We can't use you for a StarCraft event. A StarCraft event, now, by the way, because it was different times, Blizzard had specifically said, oh, we love Richard when he hosts events. So we're going to pay you for the inconvenience. So I got paid for an event I never attended because Riot Games didn't want me in the building, and they leveraged all of their disgusting, so look, I'm not just saying that because of this. Riot Games has been vindictive with everyone who's ever spoken out about Riot Games. That story about I Will Dominate, where I think Duncan missed out a detail that I think they were drinking at an after party when it happened, which makes it even more disgraceful. But again, I Will Dominate just said whoever designed that skin is fucking stupid, and it turned out that the person who had designed that skin was in earshot, and as a result of that, they basically faked that he was toxic and banned him from competitive play for a year to teach him a lesson. You should be absolutely terrified if you go against Riot Games. When I was reporting about Riot Games, Nick Allen famously, and look, we're all cool now, we've talked about it when he was working at Twitch, we're all cool now, but Nick Allen warned me and said, you're not making any friends in this industry, wink, wink, meaning, we're gonna fucking do whatever we can to fuck you over if you keep lashing out at us and reporting stuff. And I just said, I will get the screenshot again, it's in the Dead Man Switch, but I can show that one because I've talked about it enough. I just told him, I just said, listen, motherfucker, you are not going to be the ones that get rid of Richard Lewis. Like, everyone's tried. ESL tried. Like, fucking, I've lost track. EG tried. You know what I mean? Nobody will get rid of me. Like, nobody. I am unkillable in esports terms. The only person that can get rid of me is me. I go nowhere. So, basically, I told him that, and here we all are. And he's moved on to a company. And when we talked during a Twitch panel, I think I was doing it to CES. He was there talking about esports, and we talked about it. And he said, "Yeah, I was out of line." And Riot's a crazy place, man, and it made all of us a little bit crazy at that time. So I'm sorry. And I said, apology accepted. I wanted to get him on the podcast actually to talk about some of the shit, but needless to say, because he still wants to work in this industry, he's really worried about ending up somewhere where maybe a Riot executive or a Riot employee is going to end up. So. Yeah, ES Force have come after me. Sapinda literally said, sent somebody to come up and physically intimidate me in person. Look, nobody. It's the bullet in the head, guys. That's the way you're getting me. So I'll never not say what the fuck I want and what's true, because that's what you earn when you put your blood, sweat, and tears into an industry. So, until somebody's willing to pony up and just fucking have me killed, this is what you get. So, not intimidated by a company telling me, we will say bad things about you and stop you working. Yeah, fine, you do that. I could go independent tomorrow and be perfectly fine. So anyway, let's get back to it. We'll ignore that Vice first published it. But anyway, it said on May 3rd, Riot released a public statement that said the existing lawsuits would still go through arbitration, but that they would give future employees an opt-out for forced arbitration. It's not good enough, guys. It's not good enough. As soon as current litigation is resolved, we will give all new rioters the choice to opt out of mandatory arbitration for individual sexual harassment and sexual assault claims. So it's only for those. At that time, we will also commit to have a firm answer around expanding the scope and extending this opt-out to all rioters. But Riot employees still walked out today. We're asking Riot to fully end forced arbitration for past, current, and future rioters, including contractors, and to withdraw its use in active litigation. We stand with the current plaintiffs whose alleged abusers remain in leadership positions at Riot. Victims of harassment and discrimination should have the right to choose how to confront their abusers, whether that's in private arbitration or in a court of law. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And then check out this Riot response for just being so full of shit. Just classic Riot.
Nice to see the show come back.
No worries. Thank you. Haven't. Appreciate it. In the statement published on its website, Riot said it knew its solution wouldn't satisfy all employees. We understand and respect rioters who choose to protest this decision on Monday. You've all had your cards marked, by the way. I hope you're a squeaky clean, because Riot will be looking to fuck you any which way they can. We admire their conviction and willingness to stand up for their beliefs, it said. Then it argued its reason for using forced arbitration and provided a timeline for changes to company policy. We support rioters making their voices heard today, Riot told Vice in an email. We have asked all managers to make every accommodation to allow rioters to participate during the 2 to 4 p.m. window, including freeing up meeting times. We respect rioters who choose to walk out today and will not tolerate retaliation of any kind as a result of participating or
Happy
not.
second anniversary. Cheers, mate.
No worries. Good to see you about two years. 2 years. All the 2-year crew in the motherfucking his house. Leadership made it clear that while open to changing the policy moving forward, they are not committed to changing this policy for current rioters, which is a disgrace. We want to see a precise timeline for when these amendments will happen. And there you have it. So, I mean, good on people like rioters finally getting their shit together, doing a walkout. I saw some photos from the walkout that sort of had their own, like, telling components to the story. But, you know, I've just heard so many fucking horror stories now. Like, Upcomer is a new upcoming esports site, so they're appropriately named. They sent Kevin Hitt, the guy who used to edit VP Esports, who's their new senior features writer there, and these are the types of pictures they were getting. Like, look, I reported and he got promoted. Terrible stuff. They did the write-up saying they won't change the policy. They did a full transcription of the speeches. I think there's some more pictures here if you want to just kind of go through them.
Even a real journalism. That's right.
Here it is. And as I said, you know, there's a lot of rioters who have me blocked. There's a lot of rioters who think I'm the fucking devil. Let me just shrink. Look how small I am here, just to stay in the frame. You can see this is the employee walkout. You silence one of us, you silence all of us. Be the company you say you are. I mean, that's like the full fucking problem with Riot Games. They're never gonna do that. I reporting a promote. That's that one. What does that one say? Forced is not a word women like. Yeah, absolutely. And we are talking about sexual harassment specific cases here. So I think all told, all of this stuff that's been going on, it's like, it just shows what Riot Games are, and I'm glad people are starting to wake up to that fact. As somebody that has railed against the malicious and malevolent force in gaming that Riot Games is, and Riot Games always has been, let's just understand that this is a company who in 2009 aggressively went out there, saturated the market with keys and staff and going to events and giving you freebies and play our game and promote our game. And then they had a policy where it was if you got so many people to subscribe, they'd put a character, based on you in the game. They fucked over Total Biscuit with that. They fucked over a bunch of content creators for that, and instead said, oh, we can't do a full hero. We're going to have to give you like an item instead and name an item after you. Just all lies. Lies at every turn. Maliciousness at every turn. And, and then on top of that, You know, they worked with partners and said, hey, look, here's some prize money, DreamHack, go run an event. Here's some prize money, MLG, go run an event. Here's some staff to help you run the event. Run the event. Then they turned around once these events had basically built up the teams, built up the fucking calendar, and then they turned around and said, we're creating our own league now. You can have our road show. You can have live games at your events, or nothing at all, because it's our IP. So all the people who built up their game, they fucked them over. Not to mention that while they were doing it behind the scenes, everything they were trying to do to fuck over Dota, which included filing nuisance patents and getting involved in lawsuit claims and legal claims they had no business being involved in, right? Telling organizations you can have a League of Legends team or you can have a Dota team, because if you have a Dota team, we won't allow you to have a League of Legends team that competes in our league. You had Jason Katz, who was literally the first round of contracts, because he came from CGS, was trying to pressure people who were going into LCS, that they basically said in the original draft of the contract, we own your brand, we own your logo, and we own your organization's history, and we can use that in any way we see fit to market the league. That was the original draft. These people are garbage. They're garbage. The way they think about how to get things done is just unbelievable. And I've documented it all. You know, you know what I mean? Like, every step of the way, the lies, the controlling the subreddit, the paying for doing non-disclosed marketing with the subreddit which they did with Vel'Koz, which again should be a violation of Reddit's terms, but Reddit didn't care because it was the biggest fucking subreddit in terms of traffic at the time, and actually Reddit had talks with Riot about potentially selling like the Snoo or whatever it's called, that fucking little alien head, in the fucking game, in talks that never happened. I have tried to warn you about what monsters all of these people are, and everybody told me, you're biased, you're a liar, you're full of shit. And here we are, and you know, now we're talking about sexual harassment and fucking rape and all sorts of stuff named in lawsuits, you know? Like, this is... when people think they can get away with anything, they will do anything. And that's been proven time and time again in human history. That's Riot Games. That's who they are. So, that's the walkout as it went down today. Trying to think if there's anything else to really talk about in regards to the Riot Games walkout. I mean, what I'll say is, to wrap this up, because this again will get chopped up into a VOD by Griff. What I'll say is that this does have real big repercussions, because the number of publications that we're writing about this right now, and it's all the same publications that built you up as being a progressive company. By the way, they absolutely should feel fucking terrible about the way they positioned Riot in the industry, the platform they gave them, the legitimacy they gave them. When if they'd ever looked to turn over just one or two stones, they would have found the same stories I was able to find. As a pariah, I was able to find stuff like this out, and never made it public because, first of all, these are not my stories to tell, and people told me them in confidence. And then, second of all, who would have believed it? Who would have read it? I'm banned from the subreddit, the biggest critical voice of fucking Riot Games, just so happens to be banned from the biggest fucking community forum of Riot Games. Like, wake the fuck up and see what's happening. And, of course, nobody wanted to stand with me arm in arm in fucking solidarity when I got fucking bent over, and they literally tried to fuck over my gainful employment. Nobody stood arm in arm with me when it was literally a fucking interview question. What do you think of Richard Lewis's esports reporting? And if you said, I think he does good work, you could never work for Riot Games. This is all out there. This is already been reported. So nobody stood in solidarity with me. And these fucking games publications helped build the monster that they're now taking down. I mean, it's something, But at the end of the day, like, you know, they should all feel very, very guilty and very, very ashamed of the glowing praise they had poured on Riot Games for years, which basically led them to this point.